Welcome, Sundry readers! I hope you enjoy today's story. Please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Happy listening! Stories from the Growing Years by Arleta Richardson. Chapter 3. The Telephone. It took a while for telephone lines to make their way into the lumbering towns around North Branch. We watched with fascination and some impatience as the poles were placed at regular intervals along the railroad route, and wires that could actually carry voices were strung between them. "The company has bought a right-of-way along Pa's pasture," Len said as we watched the heavy timbers being lowered into the ground. "We can have a telephone out here as soon as they have them in town."
"I'd just as soon wait and see how they're going to work,"
I said.
"They may not be as practical as folks think they will be. What's the advantage of shouting across the country when you can get in the buggy and go visit? I'd rather talk to someone I can see."
"I guess that would occur to you."
Len looked at me fondly.
"You enjoy your friends so much."
But Sarah Jane didn't agree with me.
"I won't turn down a telephone when the offer comes. Think how handy it will be to talk to someone when you don't have time to get dressed to go out. And think how much faster we'll get the news. We'll know what's going on in town as soon as it happens."
"We can almost do that now," I said. "But I suppose you're right about the convenience. I'll just wait to be sure you aren't electrocuted when you use it."
The first telephone was installed at the lumber mill. Jerome was pleased, even though there was no one in North Branch that he could call. The instrument hung on the wall behind his desk and was regarded warily by the mill hands who filed in to see it.
"Hope that contraption doesn't start a fire in here,"
the foreman muttered.
"How do you know when someone wants to talk to you?"
"The telephones in town will all be hooked up to a central office," Jerome explained. "The operator will ring the person that's wanted. When you want to call out, you just lift the earpiece and crank this handle. The operator will answer and ring your party." One Sunday after church, Colleen confided that the telephone office was to be set up in their home. "I'm the only one who has used one," she said. "Jerome thought I could handle the job of operator. There were a lot of telephones in Chicago, though we didn't have one in our home. My friend took care of calls in the garment factory, and she let me work with her a few times. I think I can do it here."
"I'm sure you can,"
Sarah Jane said.
"I'm anxious to see how they work. Let us know when they get it set up, will you?"
Colleen promised to do so, and within the week we were summoned to admire the new equipment. I stared aghast at the contraption before us.
"How are you going to make sense out of that?"
I asked.
"Do you know where all those lines go?"
We gazed at the board that appeared to be a table of wires and holes to plug them into. Colleen didn't seem dismayed. "The man from the telephone company stayed a couple of hours to show me how to run it. Each one of the holes is a separate telephone. Suppose this one is yours, Mabel. If you want to call Sarah Jane, you pick up the earpiece and tell me. I'll plug the line into her telephone and you can talk together. Jerome says that everyone who wants a telephone should be able to have one by the end of the year. It will take a while to run wires from the main line." Sarah Jane's eyes sparkled as she thought of the new toy that would soon be hers.
"Jerome wants his managers to be on the telephone line, so I'm sure we'll have one soon. And it's certainly important for the minister to be available, Mabel. Len will need to get one right away."
"It's surprising how many things we need that we didn't even know existed a few years ago," I replied.
"This is different."
Sarah Jane had a faraway look in her eyes.
"Just think, pretty soon we'll be able to talk to someone down in Flint, just as easily as if they were in the same room with us."
"Don't be ridiculous. I'll be surprised if we can hear someone across town."
To everyone's surprise, the first telephone to go into a private house was installed in the Burtons' kitchen.
"The telephone line stretches right over our roof,"
Zachary reasoned.
"Figured we might as well hitch on to it and have one of them things in our house."
The geese fly right over our roof every fall, too, but we don't invite them into the kitchen,"
Gladys said with a sniff.
"You don't know what kind of trouble it might cause."
Gladys felt honor-bound to disagree with her husband, though it was plain to see that she was elated at the thought of possessing something the other ladies longed for. "Lorenzo has hired on with the crew that is installing the telephones," Colleen told us. "He can do that during the day and still take care of the mill cleaning in the evening. I went with him this morning when he worked at the Burtons." She shook her head in disbelief. "I hope Zachary doesn't regret his decision." We listened in wonder as Colleen related the scene. "Lorenzo's job is to install the telephone box on the wall, and the company man connects the wires. The easiest place to have it is right by the outside kitchen door. From the time we walked in, Gladys didn't take her eye off Lorenzo. When he measured the distance from the floor, she stood right over him."
"What's he doing there?"
she demanded. "That's where the telephone box will go," I explained. "It hangs on the wall."
"Hangs? You mean he's going to put holes in my wall?"
"It won't stay up without nails, Gladys. He'll be careful." Gladys grabbed the broom, and I was afraid for a moment that she planned to whack Lorenzo. She might as well have, because every time some sawdust fell to the floor as he drilled the holes, she pushed his foot over with the broom and hollered,
"Don't step on it! Don't step on it! You'll track it all over my kitchen!"
Gladys is of the opinion that since Lorenzo can't hear her, she better say everything twice. I don't know how he did it, but he was finally ready to set the box in place.
"Stop! Stop!"
Gladys yelled.
"Turn it over!"
"He can't turn it over, Gladys. That's the way it's supposed to hang. Can't you see where the mouthpiece is?"
"Then he'll have to move the handle,"
she declared.
"I'm left-handed. The crank will have to go on the left."
Lorenzo watched patiently as I relayed the message to him. "Tell her she'll have to crank with her right hand or get Zachary to do it for her. The handle doesn't fit on the other side." Gladys was not pleased, but I persuaded her that this was the way it had to be. When the job was finished, we were more than ready to leave. Before we reached the road, Gladys was on the porch calling to me.
"When can I talk to someone on the telephone?"
"Just as soon as the others are installed," I replied. "The lumber mill and the doctor's office are the only other telephones on the line." We left her mumbling that she didn't need the doctor and she could open the window and call the mill office. I'm as anxious as she is to have the other telephones working. She's going to be calling me daily to see whom she can talk with. Colleen's prediction was valid, and when the end of the year showed 26 subscribers on the North Branch line, she declared herself heartily sick of hearing Gladys's voice roaring over the telephone. One morning in December, several of us were gathered in Colleen's living room, piecing a quilt. The switchboard had buzzed several times, and Colleen had connected callers without missing any of the conversation going on in the room. "There won't be any answer there, Hilda. I just saw Martha go by toward the store. I'll let you know when she comes back." "Hello, Elizabeth. Yes, I'll connect you. What? Oh, yes, Augusta, Sarah Jane, and Mabel are here. We're working on Augusta's quilt."
"That's a marvelous piece of equipment,"
Sarah Jane commented.
"How else could we ever know what everyone in town is doing at any given moment?"
"I'm not sure that I want to," Augusta said. "I especially don't care about having everyone know what I'm doing every minute." "Gladys hasn't called this morning," Colleen observed. "I hope she isn't sick." The words had no sooner left her mouth than the board buzzed again. Colleen sighed as she picked up her earphones. "Central?"
"Is that you, Colleen?"
Gladys's voice blared out into the room. "You know it is, Gladys, and you don't have to shout. The telephone picks up your natural voice."
"I don't trust it,"
Gladys bellowed.
"How do I know anyone can hear me?"
"Believe me, everyone in this house and a few people walking by on the road can hear you. You can hear me, can't you? I'm not shouting."
"I don't know that,"
Gladys replied.
"Zachary tells me the same thing, and you know how he exaggerates. He says I'm loosening the nails in the wall, and that's pure twaddle. Now, are you going to get me Dorcas and Gage's store?"
"Yes, Gladys, I'll connect you." "Do you listen to that every day?" Myra asked. "Usually several times a day," Colleen replied.
Sometimes she calls just to see if I'm here. I hope the novelty wears off soon. No one knows how long it would have been if nature had not intervened. Human nature, that is. It hadn't taken Gladys long to find out that whenever the telephone bell sounded in her home, whether it was the specified number of rings for her or not, she could pick up the phone and join in on a conversation. This she did with increasing frequency.
If Gladys has to leave the house,
Zachary told Len,
she goes straight for the telephone when she comes back in. Wants to be sure she isn't missing a call, she says. I can't convince her that someone isn't going to stand there talking to her until she answers, but I can't get through. I warned her that one day she'll hear something she'll wish she hadn't. Eavesdroppers always do.
As usual, Zachary had things figured out correctly. On Sunday morning, I was greeting the ladies as they left the church. Gladys walked by with her nose in the air and refused to look at me.
What did you do to her?
Sarah Jane inquired.
She seems a mite put out with you.
I have no idea, I replied. I haven't even seen her since last Sunday. I hope I didn't forget something I was supposed to do for her.
That evening, as Len and I sat on the porch following the service, he cleared his throat in a way that meant he had something to say that he'd rather not mention.
Well,
I said,
does that mean your sermon isn't finished?
Not exactly, he replied. I talked to Zachary Burton after church tonight. He said that Gladys is going to take her letter of membership and go elsewhere to worship. I was stunned.
You can't be serious. She can't be serious. Whatever is the matter?
Len looked solemn, but his eyes danced. It seems that you and Augusta have maligned her publicly.
Did she happen to mention what we said? And where?
As a matter of fact, Zachary did include that information. Of course, he was laughing so hard that I had difficulty sorting it out, but it appears that Gladys picked up her telephone the other day and heard you calling her a pestilence and a busybody with a big nose who thinks everybody's business is hers.
Leonard Williams, I did no such thing. Where on earth did she get such an idea?
Suddenly, I knew what had happened.
Len? She must have heard me talking to Augusta after Lilac trampled my flowers and put her head through the bedroom window. I was talking about the cow.
Len laughed. Zachary says Gladys has vowed that she'll not touch that telephone again as long as it's in the house. She knows that half the town heard what you and Augusta think about her, and she holds the telephone company responsible for spreading it around town.
It looks like we have a call to make tomorrow, I sighed. A house call, I added hastily. I'm not sure how long she'll be able to stay away from the telephone, but I hope this cures her of listening to other people's conversations, especially if she comes into them in the middle. I think I'll call Augusta and tell her what happened.
I stood up, then sat down again.
No, I guess I won't. I'll wait and walk over there tomorrow. The telephone is responsible for enough mischief already.
End of chapter 3.